Toyota Kata uses scientific thinking as a way to empower its people to creatively identify and rapidly implement meaningful change. Scientific thinking is a routine of deliberate practices that examine what we think will happen, which is theory, and what actually happens, which is evidence. From here we can then adjust our thinking based on what we've learned from the difference. Scientific thinking is the basis for successfully pursuing seemingly unattainable goals in complex systems. It's also the basis for enabling teams to make decisions close to the action and maneuvering effectively. Scientific thinking is the intentional focus whereby we encounter new information, interpret it, and if warranted, revise our understanding accordingly. This pattern is in contrast to relying on already held beliefs to explain root cause and corrective action. Scientific thinking gives us the ability to look beyond our preconceptions and see the world and ourselves in a truer light. What's important about scientific thinking is not just whether we decide to revise beliefs based on new information, but that practicing it helps us reshape how we think, moving away from relying on subconscious biases and an artificial sense of certainty. Humans must be able to change how they think through personal experience, practice. Scientific thinking expands knowledge. Each of us have a threshold of knowledge in every situation. The threshold of knowledge, or edge of the predictable zone, is defined as the point from which we have no facts or data and need to either start guessing or experimenting. Be sure to honestly acknowledge where your knowledge threshold is and conduct experiments to expand your knowledge threshold. Any human endeavor involves a scientific process of testing and possibly adjusting. Why? Because you never know for sure how you're going to get to a place you have never been until you get there. Learning new skills and habits requires an emotion of enthusiasm in the learner. The learner should practice in the learning zone beyond their current knowledge, and the coach should encourage this behavior. Toyota Kata uses a series of basic routines to help develop scientific thinking. There's a set of routines for the person making the improvements called the Improvement Kata. There's also a set of basic routines for managers to use to help develop their team called a Coaching Kata. In summary, Kata is a deliberate practice of scientific thinking. Kata is a series of routines to be practiced daily so the routines become habit. Kata can help anyone master the fundamentals of scientific thinking. It's also a way of transferring skills and developing shared abilities and mindsets across the organization. It's important that beginners should follow the Kata routines exactly, not deviating from them, so that the learner can internalize the patterns. But with increased proficiency, each learner can start to, within limits, developing their own style. Real practice doesn't pass through these discrete stages, but they are a useful way to depict your progress as a learner. As a beginner, you repeat each practice routine without modifications, so you can absorb its fundamental pattern. You find yourself quickly becoming competent in scientific thinking as the basic patterns get habitual and you understand the why behind them. Soon, scientific thinking becomes very natural and you become proficient. At this point, you can begin to create your own approach to fit different circumstances, while sticking to the basic underlying Improvement Kata principles. Let's now take a closer look at each of the Improvement Kata steps. As I mentioned earlier, there are structured practice routines or starter kata for each step in the Improvement Kata model and for coaching. This is to help learners develop fundamental skills and operationalize the model. They're a starting point for any individual, team, or organization who would like to develop a more scientific mindset and approach. The Improvement Kata is a model of the human creative process. It's a four-step pattern of establishing target conditions and then working iteratively through obstacles by learning from experiments and adapting new thinking based on what's been learned. The first 3 steps are planning, while the 4th step is executing experiments. The Improvement Kata model comes from research into how Toyota manages people. We found a common scientific pattern of thinking and behavior in Toyota's managers' approach, their way of improving, and depicting it with this 4-step model we named the Improvement Kata. Note, Toyota's success has come from striving scientifically towards all sorts of challenging goals, not just from eliminating waste for greater efficiency. The first step is to get and understand the direction or challenge of management. The second step is to get the current condition related to the challenge. Step 3 is to set a realistic target condition that will advance the process performance towards the challenge set by management. And finally, the 4th step is to experiment to gain new knowledge and overcome obstacles that allow you to reach your target condition. Since the path to a challenging goal cannot be predicted with exactness, we have to find that path by experimenting like a scientist. With each insight, a scientist adjusts his or her course to take advantage of what has just been learned. One trick to making effective progress towards a goal is not to try to decide the way forward, but to have your team iterate its way forward by experimenting as cheaply and as rapidly as possible. This is the action of innovation, and it can be taught. The scientific process helps find the path forward not by telling you what's ahead. Instead, it shows what's ahead as a result of experimentation. In step 4 of the Improvement Kata, experimentation, we apply PDCA. The PDCA cycle gives you a practical way to reach your target condition. It provides a systematic way of working through obstacles which expands the threshold of knowledge. Your mind is the most important tool when experimenting towards your target condition. There are almost always budget constraints and important quality and safety parameters to consider when choosing an experiment. Always try to conduct frequent, rapid, cheap, non-harmful, and successive experiments towards your target condition. Now we'll explore the coaching kata used to help develop a scientific thinking culture. Together, the Improvement Kata and the Coaching Kata make up a powerful management approach. Toyota Kata coaching takes on a role similar to an instructor in music. No matter how good the kata approach is, just explaining kata doesn't generate new ways of thinking or acting. Hoping to create different behavior by explaining or trying to convince generally doesn't work. The coaching kata is a routine for managers to follow to help teach learners the Improvement Kata routine. This is so that it becomes part of an organization's culture. Asking these 5 coaching kata questions can help begin to operationalize the coaching and Improvement Kata. Let's now see how a company might deploy Toyota Kata. It starts with developing high-level strategic objectives for the company. For mature companies related to process improvements, this might be 5 or 6 strategic objectives. For companies just getting started with process improvements, this might be 1 or 2 strategic objectives. It's much easier to encourage a company to rally behind and focus on 1 or 2 strategic objectives at first. Once the culture begins to mature related to process improvements, the number of strategic objectives can be expanded. The strategic objectives of the company become the direction or challenge for the senior level leadership team. The senior level leadership team begins to list the current and target conditions related to the company's strategic objectives. The senior level leadership team's targets become the direction or challenge for their managers. As a result, managers gather critical value stream data to help identify and quantify the current and target conditions related to the KPIs that might prevent the managers from meeting their challenges. The targets for each manager becomes the challenge for their teams. Here's where the Improvement Kata begins. Each team member grasps their current and target conditions related to the challenge. In many cases, this is extracted from the value stream data gathered by management. Other times, the data will need to be gathered. Let's now summarize what we've learned. Kata is a deliberate practice designed specifically to improve continuous improvement skills and performance over time. It's a practice that involves continual evaluation of your weaknesses and targeting specific weaknesses rather than repeatedly doing what you already know how to do. It's a practice that requires a coach to observe and provide specific feedback on your current performance. This is critical to understanding what to work on in order to acquire the new scientific thinking skill set. Any complex performance requires skills. We develop new skills through practice. Long time gaps between practice sessions diminishes the effectiveness of practice. Daily often seems to be a good frequency. We're not good at self-feedback to understand where we're deviating from good practice and therefore need a coach. Continuous means many minds engaged in improving processes with daily cycles of experimentation. Systematically and scientifically improving processes is a complex skill set we are typically not good at. We can learn how to scientifically improve processes through deliberate practice of the Improvement Kata routines. The learner practices Improvement Kata routines while the coach follows the Coaching Kata routines. Once the fundamentals are mastered, you can move beyond rigidly practicing the Kata starter routines to develop your own style, but be sure to keep the basic principles of Kata. Developing these improvement skills is most important. The deliberate improvement and coaching Kata routines help evolve people from being aware of Kata to being able to teach it. Experienced learners can coach learners, and experienced coaches can coach other coaches.
Congratulations on finishing this powerful training. If you're enrolled in our certification program, click on the Final Exam button when you're ready. Once we receive your exam results, our team will schedule a live workshop to combine hands-on experience with your newly acquired academic skill set. Once the exam and hands-on workshop are complete, our team will provide you with an internationally recognized certification. If you're not yet enrolled in our certification program and would like to be, click the I Want to Get Certified button.